All right, what's up, guys? You guys ready to take a look at this first case here that we're going to look at today? What I really want to touch on is a blockout, specifically the I-bars. So we have two I-bars on this case, um, and we also have what I'll call a modified T. The biggest thing I want to talk about is actually the arm coming up to the clasp. So within our DME library, I'm gonna basically bump to behind the scenes here. You can see in our control panel, if we look at the removables section here and we actually go to the profiles of the parts that we're using and look at the clasps, when we look at an I-bar, so the actual I-bar, we even put it in the title so that we're aware of it. I-bar, no auto relief. And we go down to the bottom, it's not checked, meaning that I-bar is going to be on the model when it's placed, unless there's manual blockout, wax placed. But when we place a T-bar arm, and we'll click on a T-bar arm, notice that auto relief is checked, meaning that arm is going to be off 0.5 or half millimeter from the model. So if there's wax or blockout, it's going to go on top of that as well. And the reason we're doing that is because it's the only way within 3Shape that we've found that we can control the contact of the I-bar to the tooth. So if you checked auto relief on the I-bar, there's no way to stop exactly when and where that auto relief starts. So your ability to control how it contacts the tooth is affected. And this is the only way and the best way that we've found to actually control how much contact of the I-bar you actually want on the tooth. So we'll get into this a little bit further once we get to the clasping step. We're going to move forward here. I've set my path of insertion here already. So what you need to do on I-bars is manually add 0.5 relief. And I'll show you what I do here. So 0.5, and I can tell that I'm maxing out my wax height. You can just tell it like it hits its maximum height because I set my maximum height here at 0.5. I said, okay, so I'm going to control this arm, and I want this I-bar arm to start to contact right where I'm tapering down that relief. Because we don't want this in contact with the tissue. There will be times like here where you just naturally, because of the blockout angle, have more than 0.5, so you don't need to worry. Like, you obviously have enough. You're off the tissue, but now we need to remove here and smooth. So if we look at our undercut view, we can see, okay, this is where I really want this I-bar to contact. This I-bar is, basically going to have minimal, if any, effect, because there's just not much retention available on the buckle there. So now with this one, we know that we're going to use the T-bar arm part here. So that's going to have the relief automatically built in. So all we need to do, excuse me, is clean back for the clasp and then smooth for that transition. So blockout wise, I kind of bump up my intensity a little bit here on the smoothing tool. I'm going to go around, soften these edges here. And then I'm going to blend where this transitions into that saddle. I'm going to smooth as that comes in. So that's how you control that I-bar contact. And that's the difference between using the I-bar arm and the T-bar arm. There is also a heavy version, but those settings are exactly the same as far as the relief. So you would handle those exactly the same. So let's move. Okay, keep in mind here we're gonna remove this resin gap because we're gonna try to make this transition from the I-bar arm as best we can. There will be a small step because keep in mind you're maxing out your manual block out, the wax that you had here at 0.5, and your resin gap here is at 0.6. The reason we do that is because if we do thin resin gap, which we know is at 0.4, or if we do heavy, it's at 0.8, and our default regular is 0.6. 0.5 is in the middle between that thin and the regular, so that we're minimizing that step in that transition as that arm approaches here. You will still see a small 0.10 step, but it's minimal, and it's honestly the best solution we've been able to come up with for controlling the contact of the I-bar to the tooth. So we select our, I'll call it plate bar. All right, so we're gonna select, once we get the clasping here, I'm gonna use the acres even though this is a T-bar, and I'll show you why. Since this is a modified T-bar, it's just a shorty T-bar. I'm gonna scooch that down a little bit in width because I know this arm is gonna come up and overlap. So T-bar arm. Again, there is a tip and a tail on these, so they do taper, and we want that taper to come towards the clasp. So if I reverse this, you can tell how wide that is. That's not what we want. And then look at how this leading edge right here, I'm lining that up with this leading edge on the actual arm to create that smooth part transition. And I bring this arm into, and then I bring it down pretty much a little bit flush, I'll say. Okay, now on these you can see where we have this block out prepared. We select the arm, again there's a tip on these as well. You want the thinner edge contacting the tooth. Looks like that. And if you bring it kind of where this notch is, that cleans up that transition. And it's also good for our customer because we want this tooth is going to be set here. We want that coming behind that tooth when they set it. This one looks like it's the wrong way. Yep, there we go. That's how we want that. And I think we're going to come back, a couple of holes here, we're going to come back to that spot. All right, so our first sculpt here, we're just going to focus on, like always, our finishing line placement is going to be here. So I'm adding a little, removing some of the high spots And then using the smoothing tool, the green here, just to prepare that for the finishing line. Same here, I'm going to leave my smoothing tool up. I'm going to add a little in this kind of low spot. Try to smooth. Notice I'm adding at 5 microns here. I just dialed it down a lot, adding just in those low spots to try to get this a little better. There we go. All right, our only part we have for finishing line, that's the one we want right there. You can tell that that's facing the wrong direction. Right click, reverse the spline. We want this, I'll say concaved area that's going to be facing the acrylic. We want that facing where the teeth are missing, so that holds that acrylic in. Reverse that spline. Taper that a little bit. These smaller areas, you can taper that finishing line a little bit to make it fit in there. I'm going to add a point here just to try to give it this better, I'll say U shape, kind of make it more smooth. All right, so we're going to go to our last sculpt here. I'm at between 5 and 10 microns, what I'm adding here. I'm going to smooth right there without losing my detailed edge of my finishing line. Same here. Notice where my pointer is. The white part of my pointer is exactly where I want to add material. Even though the tool I'm working with is wide, the diameter is wide, as you can tell, but I'm focused more on the actual pointer of the mouse, the white part of the mouse where I'm adding. You don't want to sculpt with a small diameter. You just get high spots. You want to spread that evenly, almost as if you're in an analog world when you're waxing this, that you're using a wide tool or a wide flame, so you have even distribution of this material. Otherwise, you just get all lumpy, bumpy. Doesn't look good. It's not smooth. It adds more work. I'm going to definitely add here as I'm coming up to this rest, because again, this is a common breaking point and where stress is going to be applied as it's tooth-borne in this area. So I'm going to make sure I have enough strength. I'm bringing this to green because we're at 1 millimeter on the thickness map. So I'm bringing that up to at least 1 mil. And then I'm going to see if I can take any out of this rest on the occlusion. I'm bringing it just to red, barely to red, like that. So I'm going to look at this rest, bring that up a little bit more. Right where this arm comes in, we're going to make sure this is nice and strong. Again, you should be able to see here that when you remove the model, that step, that 0.10, where we had the manual block out at 0.5 and a resin gap at 0.6. Take a little bit out of this distal guide or plate. this wraps a tooth. We have plenty of thickness vertically and widthwise, so I'm going to kind of define this almost as a, I'll say 90-degree a little bit more. Same here. Can take a little bit out of this. This looks strong coming in, but also defined where this arm is ending. Take a little out. It's good. And then we're just gonna check our stipple. We don't want the stipple. We're gonna select our paintbrush tool. We're gonna remove the stipple on the rest. We don't want that or need that. We're gonna extend this back. We're gonna see if we can connect this. Kind of keeping that spacing that we have evenly on this to match the rest of the frame. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit. There we go. That looks good. I'm going to try to see if we can put our standard default hole size in here. Select view direction, 2mm hole. I don't want to go near this connection of this arm. I want this strength coming in. So if you have concerns over that, you want to go smaller than larger. You don't want to sacrifice the connection of your arm coming in if the hole size that you're trying to place near it is too large. It's not worth it. You're really not gaining that much, and you're risking that arm breaking off. I've seen it a few times. So I'm going to try to put one smaller diameter, and I'm going to see if I can break up this leading edge like that. There, that looks good. And we have plenty of good, strong connection here still coming into that saddle. So we check our pattern. Should default, but it doesn't always, to 0.08. Line spacer, as always, 0.050. 3mm on our tissue stop default. Half hanging off the saddle. Let's hit preview. Looks pretty good. We'll remove the model by the shortcut S key as in Sam, or if you have a hotkey set up on your keypad somewhere. Make sure you have connection on your tissue stops. Again, we can look at that little step that we do have, which is why we confirm we have enough thickness vertically here coming in on both of these eye bars. And we're good. I'll close that one out. Well, before I do that, let's just look. Here's your manual relief that we applied. That's off the model. We don't want contact with the tissue. And this is the automatic by the software. Now notice the software tapers down its auto relief right there. And that's why we've had to do the eye bars the way that we do, because you can't control the contact to the tooth. And we controlled the contact exactly where that manual relief was added and removed. All right, hope that's helpful. I know it's unique. I don't think anybody that I know does it that way. It's the only way we've really been able to find. So we'll see you next time.